Welcome to the Financial Freedom Podcast with your host, Lorna Poole, sharing the secrets to creating wealth, investing, and that all-important money mindset. To find out more and accelerate your journey to financial freedom, head on over to www.lornapoole.com to get started. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Financial Freedom Podcast. How would you love to preserve your principal and live off the interest? Well, my guest expert today is Amagrande, and she was raised in a small Southern Californian town and learned business at a young age while working with her parents and grandparents. After college, Anne worked in retail logistics and operations, working with one of the largest retailers in the world. In her spare time, she found time to work within her true passion of real estate and finance. Upon entering real estate, Anne began flipping homes. After a while, she realized that it was not feeding her true inspiration for helping others. Anne changed direction and sought a way to create a win-win scenario. Along with her team, Anne created a true unique system designed to create a win-win-win model for investors, long-term residents, and locally owned and operated vendors, all while maintaining a profitable model for her business. Anne's motto is when everyone wins, the world is in a better place. Anne, great to have you here.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here.
You know, preserving principal and living off the interest. Explain this.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to. So one of the primary focuses of our business, the paramount thing that a lot of our investors are looking for is safety and security. And yes, the way that I perceive that, and the way that, a lot of our investors have discussed it with us is, look, I want my investment to be safe. As a lot of people have looked at what happened in the financial crisis of 2008, we saw a lot of the stocks go down, where that's actually depleting your principal. So not only are they not getting the dividends, but their actual principal has been depleted. And when we are moving the assets into real estate, our first and primary goal is always to preserve the capital. So when we go into each one of our asset acquisitions, each one of our properties that we're looking at, we have a very strict and specific criteria that each property needs to hit before we'll actually do the acquisition. And we want to make sure that the principal or the initial investment into that property is always safely and securely associated with that asset, to make sure that even if we have to sell it in a downturn, we're still able to bring back the initial capital that was instilled into the property.
You're looking at the numbers really have to hit here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And why is real estate, is it a safer option to preserve your principal, say, than stocks? I know stocks liquidate quicker, and as you say, can go up and down. How is that, a better option with real estate?
Well, I would say that any investment is a risk. So, real estate is also a risk. It just happens to be a lower risk. So when we look at the way that many large families here in the U.S. have accumulated long-term and generational wealth, we look at Warren Buffett, we look at the Rockefellers, we look at a lot of these large families, and what we've noticed across the board is that they all have a base investment in real estate. Because although, in the stocks, you can have, tremendous gains and you can have tremendous losses, and that's through that volatility, you can actually, make a lot more money than you can in real estate, although it's a much higher risk. So real estate tends to be, if you do it correctly, and the way that it's intended to be done, it is a much lower risk because you're tying it to a physical asset. So with a company, you're buying stocks based on, and you're investing in that company based on what you believe their profit is going to be, based on what the information the company is putting out there. So there are a lot of great companies, Amazon, for example, they have just had this tremendous explosion of growth over the last 10, 15 years. And then you have companies like Enron that were cooking the books. So there's always going to be some form of volatility, and there's always going to be some form of risk that's associated, not just with stocks, but also in real estate. We just happen to do it in a way that is much more safe and secure because that's what our investors look for. So this is why within real estate, we're not looking to flip. I'm not looking to wholesale. What we do is we buy properties and we hold them for long term, which really feeds to our motto, which is building generational wealth one family at a time. I'm not focusing on making a large, giant profit in the next month or 2 months. What I'm looking to do is create sustainable and predictable cash flow for our investors and for their families for the long term.
So if I approach you in the morning, how do we go about this? Or, you know, where are these properties, or what kind of properties are we looking at?
So our bread and butter is definitely single family. So there's a lot of, my background is in economics, and we look at a lot of different factors that affect each and every market that we go into. So we primarily right now, we're still buying in Arizona. Phoenix is still, it's an okay market in Phoenix. We haven't been buying here as prevalently as we had in the past. We have a couple of other markets that we're focusing on more heavily, although we're still buying in Phoenix because this is where our headquarters is. So we can always, you know, as you know, those onesie twosie deals come in, we'll absolutely buy those as long as they make sense for the business. So we buy in a couple of different states and a couple of different markets across the country currently.
And you said you're buying single family homes, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So that's definitely our bread and butter.
Why is that the choice?
There's a lot of, again, this goes back to a lot of business decision that we decided to make. So when we are looking at, you know, how we can provide additional safety and security, it always goes back to that, is safety and security. And a way that we provide safety and security is, you know, we focus on single family because for the residents that were moving into these homes, traditionally they have children. And I don't know a single mother or father that would allow for their children not to have a place to live, a roof over their head. So if it comes down to, you know, whether or not we're going to let the car get repossessed or we're going to have something else, they're always going to choose, my children will have a place to live. And so we utilize a lot of that psychology. We focus on a lot of the blue collar neighborhoods because there is a lot more security in that. So again, there's a lot of demographical information and a lot of due diligence that we go into really what we're looking to buy. And we just found that single family and having a personal residence is a much safer investment than moving into a commercial or moving into a multifamily. So
are your investors looking to live here as well as make a pay, or this is an investment?
This is traditionally just an investment. So we manage everything from the acquisition all the way through to the back end exit or sale of the property. So we do the acquisition just as though we were going to flip. As I mentioned, my background is in flipping. So we know how to buy right. And that's traditionally where you make your money, is on the buy. And that's what every good real estate investor will ever tell you, is you make your money on the buy. So we buy correctly, and then we do what I call rentivation.
So explain that a bit more. Make money on the buy. What does that really mean?
What that means is, you know, you need to be very effective as to what you're buying and why you're buying it. So, you know, you obviously want to make sure that you're not buying something that's overpriced. You want to look at the demographical information, look at your specific market, make sure that it's hitting specific numbers. So we focus on very specific, you know, return on investment numbers. We focus on very specific, you know, demographical information, very specific zip codes. So it's a lot of those things. You also want to make sure that you are getting great terms. So that goes down to your interest rate. Are you putting a down payment? Are you getting a loan? You know, a lot of this information all plays into how effectively your real estate portfolio is going to work for you.
And are people buying these like a crowd fund or singly?
No, we actually are very specific to working with individuals. And what that means is, rather than doing a crowd fund or, you know, a REIT per se. What we do is we work directly with the individual investor. This creates a lot more transparency, and this allows a lot more control for our investors because, if one of our residents wants to buy one of the homes, I don't need to go back to a board. I don't need to get a vote from 100 different investors to say yay or nay. I just call the investor and say, hey, the individual wants to buy the home. How does this work within your portfolio? Are you able to take the added income this year, or is that something that you're not ready to do? And he basically says, I'll give my opinion about the market and where we're at and things. And, I'll give all of that. And I say, what would you like to do? And traditionally they say, hey, this either works or this doesn't work. And then I go back through the resident and I tell them, hey, this either works or this doesn't work. And so it's always the individual investor's decision. And they love the transparency and they love the ability to just have that control. Because that's what this is about, is they really just want to know that their investment is working hard. They have a team like mine that's going to go in there and make sure that things are being done correctly.
And, okay, so when you say preserving the principal is the capital you're putting in the first place. We're preserving that.
Correct. That's the first and foremost thing that we want to do. And
how do you know that in 10 or 20 years from now, there's a massive downturn that, the price of the house is not going to fall miserably, or, how do you protect yourself from that?
You mean like what happened in 2008?
Yeah.
So, again, it's all about buying right and holding for the long term. And so it's just
so it's holding throughout that, the ups and the ups.
Yes, exactly. It's just like, if you had a portfolio in the stock market when 2008 hit, and your portfolio dropped by 50%, well, are you going to pull it out at that point? You're going to, no, why would I pull it out when it's low? I want to regain, obviously the stock market's is going to rebound. So we just have to wait it out until it rebounds. And then you can make that decision at that time. It's the same thing with real estate. It's also an investment. So people have this, this mentality that real estate operates very differently than the stock market, which in some ways it does, but it's also, you just need to look at it as numbers, and you need to remove a lot of that emotion that people bring
come to that. Yeah. Cause a lot of why people get themselves in situations is because the emotion kicks in and they panic. Correct. And
absolutely. And this is
you
why
must have to work with that a little bit too.
Absolutely. And this is why a lot of our investors work with us, is because we run this like a true business. We don't run this as a hobby. This is not something we're, weekend warriors. We run this like a business, and we run it every single day the way that it's intended to. And every business is intended to make profit. And if your business isn't making profit, your business is going to fail. So when a lot of investors come in and they say, oh, it's not a big deal, it's only got a negative cash flow for 2 years or 4 years, and then I'll sell it. Well, hang on, wait a second. If it's negative cash flowing, you're not running your business effectively.
No.
Right? It's just like saying, okay, well, I'm going to go in and work my 9-to-5 job, and I'm going to pay them to work there. Well, hang on, that is just screwed up logic. So we always go in with the mentality of this specific property. Each property has to make money. Each property has to make a profit. Each property has to pay for itself. And do
you have certain margins between the cost and, the prediction of how much that's going to be earning monthly rental, and, that's makes it safe as an investment?
Yeah, absolutely. We have very specific criteria dependent on which market we're going into. So there are many different markets. There's over 200 different markets in the U.S. And
what do you mean by different markets?
So Phoenix is its own market. Tucson would be its own market. Nashville would be its own market. And each one of them, dependent on the companies that are coming in and bringing in jobs or bringing in different types of businesses, they're all going to operate just slightly different. Obviously, there's a national market and state markets, but each individual market has its own ups and downs. So we saw this in Atlanta. So Atlanta had a huge downturn a couple of years back, and they're already rebounded, but we've been watching that market for many years, and they had a huge downturn, and then they rebounded. But the rest of the country was thriving. So we always look at these nuances, and this is actually how a lot of real estate investors make their money, is because we follow these very, very diligently to make sure that we are always ahead of the curve. So as soon as it gets out into the media, like right now, I think that up in Ohio, there's a couple of cities, Columbus and Cleveland, are fantastic markets, and that's what the papers are all saying. But we've already moved out of those areas.
Yeah.
As the true investors, this is how that trend starts. Is the true investors are going in ahead of that curve, and then by the time it gets to the media and all of the regular. Yeah, all of the regular investors are now coming in, or the smaller investors are coming in. It's because they've already taken up all of the exceptional deals. There's still definitely money to be made, but a lot of those exceptional deals have already come to fruition.
And what do you mean by living off the interest? How do we make that happen?
It's cash flow. I mean, there's a lot of people that used to say, cash is king, but the new mentality is cash flow is king. And so when you are able to invest, let's just say